Hello everyone, and welcome to section 2.10, the last lesson in chapter 2. This lesson is about converting between fractions and decimals. So there's two ways that we have to look at this. If we're converting between fractions and decimals, we have to be able to convert from a fraction to a decimal, but we also have to be able to convert from a decimal to a fraction. So we're going to look at both ways and both conversions, and just do a couple of examples and go from there. The first thing that we're going to look at is on the left-hand side of the screen. That is converting from a fraction to a decimal. So to solve this, we are going to use long division. We are going to go one extra spot using 0 as a placeholder. So previously in long division, once we got to the end of the number, we stopped, we wrote things as a remainder, or we wrote it as a fraction. To actually solve things out that way, what we're going to do is we're going to use a decimal point, we're going to go an extra spot, and go from there. So the first example here is, how many times can 6 go into 345? So when we write that, we write our long division bar here. Helps if I write the right number, 345. And 345 is going to be divided by 6. So first off, we take a look here and we say, well, how many times can 6 go into 3? It can't. Right? So we look and we say, well, how many times can 6 go into 34? Well, 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 6 is 36, so that's too big. So we say 5. 6 times 5 is 30, and we subtract that off. 34 minus 30 is 4, and we bring down the 5. Well, how many times can 6 go into 45? Well, I know that 6 times 7 is 42. So 7 times 6 is 42. We subtract that off, and we left with 3. Now, to get a decimal answer, all we have to do here, and I'm going to use a different color for this. I'll use blue, right? We're going to just add a decimal point in and then a 0 as a placeholder. We can even extend the division bar if we need to. And so now what we're going to do is we're just going to drop this 0 down that we created as a placeholder. And that gives us another level of division to go through. Well, how many times can 6 go into 30? Well, 6 can go into 30 5 times. 5 times 6 is 30. And we know that we're done. And we're done because we got an even answer. So, the last thing that we have to look at here, I'm going to highlight this in green for you. That decimal that we put in, we have to put a decimal in our answer. And notice that they have to be lined up. They have to be matched up. So, how many times can 6 go into 345? It can go in 57.5 times. Right? So, if I had the fraction, the original fraction could have been written as 345 divided by 6, 345 over 6. How do I convert that to a decimal? Well, I divide it, and I get my answer. Okay, so now we move on to decimal to fraction. How do I change a decimal into a fraction? Well, the way that we do it is we put the first two numbers behind the decimal over 100 and reduce. Okay, so if I have the number 1.35, I can see here that I'm going to highlight in yellow that I have the numbers 35 behind the decimal place. So to solve that, I know that since I have a whole 1, I'm going to have 1 as part of my mixed number, or part of my fraction. And now all I have to do is take 35 and put that over 100. Now, some of you might be asking, why is it 100? Well, the number of spots behind the decimal place, which was 2, has to equal the number of zeros. So, if there was only one number behind the decimal point, then it would be over 10, because 10 has 1 0. If there were 7 numbers behind the decimal point, you would put all 7 numbers over 1 and then 7 zeros behind it. As long as the number of zeros and the number of places behind the decimal match exactly, you're in good shape. Okay, so now all we have to do is just reduce that fraction, which was 35 over 100. I know that 5 can go into both of these. 5 can go into 35 7 times. 5 can go into 100 20 times. So that makes my final answer 1 7/20. Okay, so again, we took the two numbers behind the decimal point and wrote that over 100. Again, it's 100 because 2 zeros, 2 spots in the numerator there. And then I reduced 1 7/20. Okay, let's look at our second example. What is 0.79 as a fraction? So 79, we would just write 79 because those are the two numbers behind the decimal places. Over, well, since there are two numbers behind the decimal places, I get 2 zeros. So then I have 79 over 100. Now we ask ourselves, does that reduce at all? Are there any numbers that can go into 79 that can also go into 100? And the answer is no. So your answer is just what it is. So that was a very quick process in how to convert fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. But like I said, this is our last lesson in the chapter 2. So after this is completed, you can move on to your chapter 2 quiz. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know.